The hidden rules of society no one talks about. I didn't realize I'd been following them my whole life until I broke one by accident. It wasn't a law, not written anywhere, but the shift in people's eyes told me immediately. I had stepped outside the invisible fence. No one explained it, they just treated me differently. That was my Muta one moment, the crack in the surface where I first saw the wiring underneath. And I realized, there are rules you obey without even knowing you agreed to them. These rules don't live in books or courtrooms. They live in glances, in silences, in the way a conversation suddenly changes direction when certain topics come up. Human nature psychology isn't just about desire and fear, it's about conformity. The unspoken social rules are the scaffolding that holds society together. They dictate who gets heard, who gets ignored, and how far you're allowed to step before you're gently, or brutally, pushed back in place. It's subtle. That's why it works. Someone with street-smart skills can walk into a room and feel them instantly. The placement of chairs. Who speaks first? Who interrupts without apology? But most people? They only notice the consequences, never the structure. You think you lost an opportunity because you weren't ready, but maybe it's because you didn't play the right role in the hierarchy. Social hierarchy explained. The people at the top rarely have to say they're at the top. Everyone else already behaves as if they are. And the way you learn these rules isn't through teaching. You learn through friction, through the small moments when you get the signal. Too loud, too direct, too different. It's not the words they use, it's the change in tone, the glance to someone else for approval, the pause before answering. That pause says more than the answer ever could. Game theory in real life is rarely about winning outright. It's about playing in a way that doesn't threaten the wrong people. If you rise too fast without the blessing of the gatekeepers, you'll hit an invisible wall. It'll look like bad luck. It's not. It's enforcement. Power dynamics aren't just about who holds power. They're about who decides when you're allowed to use yours. The cruel thing is, breaking these rules isn't always punished directly. Sometimes the punishment is absence. You just stop getting invited. Stop being told about decisions. Stop being in the loop. Psychological manipulation isn't always about pushing you into a corner. Sometimes it's about removing the floor under you until you can't even get in the room. Some rules are obvious once you name them. Never outshine certain people, never reveal certain truths, never side against the collective in public. But others are deeply coded. Like how disagreement is allowed only if it's wrapped in enough flattery to make it palatable. Or how vulnerability is encouraged, but only from people whose status can't be damaged by it. I've watched people with incredible talent fade into the background because they didn't have the social survival skills to navigate this terrain. And I've seen others, far less skilled, rise to the top because they knew how to read people and adjust without losing face. That's not fairness. That's the hidden economy of influence. Office politics tips won't teach you this. They'll tell you to network or build rapport, but they won't tell you the truth. Networking isn't about collecting contacts. It's about aligning yourself with the unspoken current of power in your environment. And that current isn't stable. It shifts with moods, with alliances, with the smallest public gestures. Some of the most dangerous manipulation tactics are the ones that hide inside kindness. Someone offers you help, but what they're really doing is putting you in their debt. Someone praises you, but frames it in a way that keeps you in a box. This is emotional intelligence turned into leverage, not to connect but to control. The survival mindset in a world of hidden rules isn't paranoia. It's precision. It's knowing when to comply strategically, when to challenge carefully, and when to step outside completely. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The rules aren't there for everyone's safety. They're there to keep the structure intact. And if the structure benefits you, you barely notice them. If it doesn't, they're all you see. Once you start noticing, it's everywhere. How someone's idea only gets traction when repeated by a different person. How certain people are always the ones to close the meeting. How others never speak, but still somehow decide the outcome. This is the social blueprint running in the background, and it doesn't care how moral you are. It cares how well you play. And here's the part no one likes to admit. You follow these rules too. You've bitten your tongue to avoid making someone uncomfortable. You've agreed with something you didn't believe because it kept the peace. You've laughed at a joke you didn't find funny because it came from the wrong person to offend. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. But the danger is when you forget it's conditioning. When you mistake compliance for personality. That's when you wake up one day and realize half your life has been shaped by rules you never agreed to in the first place. And you start to wonder, what would happen if you stopped following them? You think about pushing back, but then you remember every story you've heard about the person who broke the code. They're not villains in those stories, just people who stepped outside the pattern, yet they become cautionary tales. Did you hear what happened to them? Not as a lesson in courage, but as a warning, don't try it. That's how the rules enforce themselves. No written law, just quiet fear. And sometimes, the price of breaking one is subtle erosion, not open attack. Friends become polite instead of warm. Colleagues stop making eye contact. Invitations taper off. It's the social version of being erased. It doesn't hurt all at once. It bleeds you out slowly, until you start to question your own worth. That's the beauty, and cruelty, of psychological manipulation. The system convinces you to self-correct before it ever needs to punish you. Human nature psychology explains why this works so well. We're wired to seek belonging because, for most of history, being excluded meant dying. Your survival mindset is older than your morals. That's why your body tenses before you even realize you've done something wrong. It's why shame burns hotter than anger. And it's why most people don't even think of breaking the rules. They've been trained not to want to. But here's the thing. The rules aren't fixed. They shift depending on where you are, who you're with, and what's at stake. The unspoken social rules in one group might be nonsense in another. In some places, speaking first in a meeting marks you as confident. In others, it marks you as reckless. Same action, different meaning, because the rulebook isn't universal. It's custom made for every social hierarchy you step into. Street smart skills mean learning to spot the rulebook fast. You walk into a room and clock the alliances, the mood setters, the silent enforcers. You notice who interrupts without consequence, who gets praised for the same thing others get scolded for, who holds the real veto power. That's how to read people on a systems level, not just as individuals, but as pieces in a game theory in real life. And it's not just about defense. Once you understand the rules, you can decide which ones to use and which to quietly ignore. You can signal compliance without actually giving away control. You can break a rule so subtly no one notices until it's too late to stop you. That's how to win in life without getting caught in endless battles. You choose your fights, and sometimes the fight is simply refusing to play the expected role. Of course, there's a cost. When you stop following the hidden rules, you can't go back to pretending they don't exist. You'll see them everywhere, even in your closest relationships. You'll recognize the manipulation tactics in the way someone checks in on you, the subtle power dynamics in who texts first, the hierarchy embedded in group decisions about the smallest things. And you'll start to see how many of your own habits were designed to keep you safe inside the structure. How often you avoided speaking because you didn't want to seem too much. How many times you agreed to things you didn't want because saying no would break the social flow. You'll realize you've been trained to be predictable, and that predictability is what made you easy to manage. Once you see that, you face a choice. Stay predictable, keep the comfort, or step into the unknown and risk losing the safety net. It's not a glamorous choice. It's quiet. It's made in the moment you decide to speak honestly when everyone else is nodding. In the moment you walk away from a group that no longer feels right, even if it leaves you standing alone. And maybe that's the most hidden rule of all, the one no one tells you because it would make the others crumble. The rule that says, you're not supposed to realize you can leave the game entirely. That you can redraw the boundaries. That you can write a new set of rules for yourself and live by them, even if no one else does. The question is, once you see it, will you still play along? Or will you take the risk that changes everything?